You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Introducing ArcSight Intelligence by OpenText, an enterprise behavior analytics solution. Intelligence repurposes data you're probably already collecting to uncover patterns of behavior missed by other UBA offerings. With its powerful, unsupervised machine learning models trained continuously and exclusively on your data, Intelligence is your ally in detecting insider threats and novel attacks. No rules to maintain or thresholds to update, just context-rich threat hunting leads. Learn more about ArcSight Intelligence by visiting arcsight.com/cyberwire. CISA and the FBI warn of Snatch ransomware. A look at phishing trends. Ransomware is increasingly cited in cyber insurance claims. Trends in cyber threats to academic institutions. A Russian hacktivist auxiliary disrupts Canadian border control and airport sites. The ICC remains tight-lipped concerning a cyber attack. N2K's Simone Petrella sits down with Chris Krebs at the mWise conference. In today's Threat Vector segment, David Moulton from Unit 42 takes a peek into the modern threat landscape with Wendi Whitmore, Senior Vice President at Uniformity. And MGM Resorts says it's well on the way to recovery. I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire Intel briefing for Thursday, September 21st, 2023. CISA and the FBI have released a joint cybersecurity advisory outlining tactics, techniques, and procedures associated with the Snatch ransomware. The advisory says, since mid-2021, Snatch threat actors have consistently evolved their tactics to take advantage of current trends in the cybercriminal space and leverage successes of other ransomware variants operations. Snatch threat actors have targeted a wide range of critical infrastructure sectors, including the defense industrial base, food and agriculture, and information technology sectors. Snatch threat actors conduct ransomware operations involving data exfiltration and double extortion. After data exfiltration, often involving direct communications with victims demanding ransom, Snatch threat actors may threaten victims with double extortion, where the victim's data will be posted on Snatch's extortion blog if the ransom goes unpaid. Many of the steps the Snatch operators have been observed taking don't reveal a deep technical sophistication. They've exploited weaknesses in remote desktop protocol instances, and they've also purchased stolen credentials in criminal forums. Once they've achieved access to a target, they seek to compromise an administrator account and then connections to a command and control server over port 443. The C2 servers are, unsurprisingly, generally located on a Russian bulletproof hosting service. So, be on the lookout for Snatch. Take the usual precautions, particularly with respect to credentials. ZeroFox's 2023 Phishing Trends Report has found that threat actors are moving away from using Microsoft Office files to deliver malware, likely due to Microsoft disabling VBA macros by default last year. Attackers are increasingly turning to malicious Windows image files, archive files, Windows shortcut files, OneNote files, restricted permission messages files, and Windows script files. The report also looks at developments in the phishing-as-a-service market. The company says, ZeroFox Intelligence notes a range of capabilities becoming increasingly prevalent in phishing-as-a-service offerings. These include kits that are able to account for regional differences with geo-blocking, prevent engagement from unwanted sources such as researchers, and leverage multiple detection evasion techniques. ZeroFox Intelligence has observed an increase in phishing-as-a-service packages leveraging domain generation algorithms, which generate random domains threat actors can pivot to during attacks, making it harder for victims to block and remove these domains. What's driving cyber insurance claims these days? No surprise, it's ransomware. Coalition has published a report looking at cyber trends in the first half of 2023, finding that there was a 12% increase in cyber claims over the first 6 months of the year, driven by the notable spikes in ransomware and funds transfer fraud. The researchers note, companies with over $100 million in revenue saw the largest increase in the number of claims, as well as more substantial losses from attacks, with a 72% increase in claims severity from the second half of 2022. The report adds that the average ransom demand in the first half of 2023 was $1.62 million, a 74% increase compared to 2022. Another trend we're hearing about is the growing effect of ransomware on academic institutions. Researchers at cyberattack have determined that downtime caused by ransomware in the education sector has caused approximately $53 billion in losses since 2018. Cyberattack says, although ransom demands may be lower in the education sector, downtime is high. Causing downtime is one of the main priorities for cybercriminals when carrying out a ransomware attack. Schools can ill afford for systems to go down, as this often means lessons are disrupted or even canceled as a result. As our findings suggest, downtime can extend for weeks and the effects felt for months after. The researchers also note an increase in ransomware attacks against academic institutions, with 85 attacks targeting schools and universities in the first half of 2023, compared to 45 in the first half of 2022. Turning to Russia's hybrid war and its international effects, we see that Moscow's hacktivist auxiliaries have been turning their attention to Canada. No-name 05716 has claimed responsibility for recent attacks against Canadian sites, notably airports, according to La Presse. The record summarizes some of the auxiliaries' recent activity in Canada. Canada's been a prominent and vocal supporter of Ukraine throughout Russia's war. On September 15th, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity issued an alert warning that Canadian organizations, particularly government agencies, were the targets of distributed denial-of-service attacks. The center offered a measured attribution of the activity to pro-Russian actors, saying, open-source reporting links some of this activity to Russian state-sponsored cyber threat actors, whose tactics, techniques, and procedures have been extensively documented. In July 2022, the Cyber Center assessed that Russian state-sponsored cyber threat actors would almost certainly continue to perform actions in support of the Russian military's strategic and tactical objectives in Ukraine. On February 24, 2023, the Cyber Center reported on similar activity involving DDoS campaigns toward Ukraine-aligned nations. The Register reports that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, is closely holding information about the recent cyber attack it sustained. Circumstantial evidence, mostly motive, opportunity, and a record of attempts to compromise the court, still points to Russia, but little more is known at this time. The New Voice of Ukraine argues that the ICC might well construe an attack on itself as a war crime. The essay cites a foreign policy analytics report by leading prosecutor Karim Khan, who warned that such cyber attacks might be integrated into future war crimes investigations. Khan wrote, disinformation, destruction, the alteration of data, and the leaking of confidential information may obstruct the administration of justice at the ICC and, as such, constitute crimes within the ICC's jurisdiction that might be investigated or prosecuted. Finally, MGM Resorts says that it's returned operations to normal after the ransomware that's troubled it for more than a week. At least, operations seem to be more or less normal from the customer's perspective. The casino operator posted a message on its site late yesterday stating, "We are pleased that all of our hotels and casinos are operating normally. Our amazing employees are ready to help guests with any intermittent issues. We thank you for your patience and look forward to welcoming you soon. So, Danny Ocean and the boys are in custody, or at least they've been 86'd from the casino, and you can put on your evening wear and go back to pretending that you're in Monte Carlo in a James Bond movie. Coming up after the break, our own Simone Petrella sits down with Chris Krebs at the mWise conference. In today's Threat Vector segment, David Moulton from Unit 42 takes a peek into the modern threat landscape with Wendi Whitmore, Senior Vice President of Uniformity. Stay with us. Are you frustrated with cyber risk scores backed by mysterious data, zero context, and cloudy reasoning? Typical cyber ratings are ineffective, and the true risk story is begging to be told. It's time to cut the BS. Black Kite believes in seeing the full picture with more than a score, one where companies have complete clarity in their third-party cyber risk using reliable, quantitative data. Make better decisions. Reduce your uncertainty. Trust Black Kite. When was the last time you thought about how much of your information is on the web and who has it? If it's been a while, I just reminded you that it is a lot, and a lot of companies have it. Everything we do these days offers up a little more information to be collected, from paying bills to posting on social media. And all of that information is bought and sold constantly to data brokers and other third parties who likely don't have your interests in mind. Don't wait for your personal information to be sold to the highest bidder. Use Delete Me to remove your personal data that is out there for sale and protect yourself and your family against risks like identity theft, phishing scams, and doxing. Listeners can receive 20% off when you visit joindeleteme.com/cyberwire and use promo code CyberWire. That's joindeleteme.com/cyberwire, promo code CyberWire for 20% off when you join. In today's sponsored Threat Vector segment, David Moulton from Palo Alto Network's Unit 42 speaks with Wendi Whitmore, Senior Vice President at Uniformity. Here's their conversation.
AI is game-changing in terms of the impact it's going to have on attacks, and then in particular, attackers' ability to move faster.
Welcome to Threat Vector, a segment where Unit 42 shares unique threat intelligence insights, new threat actor TTPs, and real-world case studies. Unit 42 has a global team of threat intelligence experts, incident responders, and proactive security consultants dedicated to safeguarding our digital world. I'm your host, David Moulton, Director of Thought Leadership for Unit 42. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with Wendi Whitmore, SVP of Unit 42. Her career is full of highlights, including being an inaugural member of the first ever Cyber Safety Review Board launched by the United States Department of Homeland Security. She serves on the Industry Advisory Board for Duke University's Master of Engineering in Cybersecurity, and as a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Cybersecurity. At Unit 42, we're thrilled to have Wendi leading our team, and today she's here to share her thoughts on the current threat landscape. Let's get right into it. Wendi, give us some insight into the current state of the threat landscape.
Hey, David, thanks for having me today. So I think what's going on is that attacks are happening at a scale, a sophistication, and a speed that we really haven't seen before altogether. And the reality is that makes the work we do even more valuable than it's been before. So when we talk about scale, The reality is that businesses rely on more applications and third-party software than they ever have before, and vulnerabilities in that same software are increasing in scope to a massive degree. That's resulting in organizations being compromised, oftentimes within hours of the public disclosure of a vulnerability. One of the most recent examples is the MoveIt case, where the Clop ransomware group exploited over 600 organizations starting in May of 2023, and this number continues to grow. When we look at sophistication, though, you couple this in particular with scale, you're seeing that nation-state actors in particular, groups like Russian APT cloaked URSA, who's famous for the SolarWinds attack, we're seeing them really demonstrate in-depth knowledge of business processes. And especially today, if you move into cyber criminal landscape, what's in the news right now with muddled Libra or scattered Spider, you see those organizations really have a strong understanding of business processes and how IT departments work in particular. And then lastly, what they're doing is leveraging so many apps, trusted applications like Office 365, Google Drive, for example, Dropbox, that we use and really trust, and then using those to get information out of the environment. Lastly, when we talk about speed, as if the sophistication and scale weren't enough, right? The reality is it used to take these attackers days, weeks, and even months in some cases to carry out an attack. And today we're seeing them do that same attack in a span of hours. I think the biggest concern there is that the attackers are operating by and large faster than organizations are able to respond, especially when we look at the mean time to respond being 6 days, which it is today. It's absolutely critical that the mean time to respond decreases and becomes faster than the time it actually takes for the attacker to carry out that same attack.
Wendi, how is AI coming into play here?
So AI is, and in particular, generative AI is really increasing the speed with which attackers are able to operate. So if you think about the work that they do today, there's the human component of it with social engineering, and generative AI in particular enables them to move faster, reduces language barriers, and increases their effectiveness of social engineering tactics used by these same threat actors. And then when we look at new tools coming into play, like Worm GPT and Fraud GPT, we're going to see that enabling them to be able to move more effectively going forward.
What do businesses need to consider when looking to protect themselves against quicker, more creative, and large-scale threat actors?
First and foremost, speed. So what I mean by that is businesses need to be able to respond at machine speed or the speed of the attack, right? So they need to be able to implement detections at the speed of the attacker, and they're going to have to leverage technology to do that. The second challenge I see relates to integration. So there's too many tools today that organizations are using that require manual integration. They're different screens and different panes of glass. And having a platform approach to detection really helps organizations detect, prevent, and respond at every stage of the attack, which includes network, endpoint, and cloud. And then lastly, we really need these operationalized capabilities and processes. So we can't stop at just having speed to detect and then integration of tooling, but it really has to be operationalized with strong, repeatable processes in order for it to be consistently effective, but also continually matured within an organization.
Wendi, thanks for joining me on Threat Vector today. It's great to hear directly from you. For our listeners that want to learn more about the threat actor groups, muddled Libra or cloaked URSA that Wendi mentioned today, or to go deeper on many more threat actors, visit the Uni42 Threat Research Center. And if you think that you may be under attack, contact the experts at Uni42 to help assess your risk and exposure. We'll be back on the CyberWire Daily in 2 weeks. Until then, stay secure, stay vigilant. Goodbye for now.
And that is Threat Vector, a sponsored segment brought to you by Palo Alto Network's Unit 42. Chris Krebs is well known and respected in the cybersecurity world as former director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, now a partner at the Krebs Stamos Group and an advisor to SentinelOne. My N2K colleague Simone Petrella sat down with Chris Krebs at the mWise conference in Washington, D.C., hosted by Mandiant and Google Cloud. Here's their conversation.
So I know one thing that has been on kind of all of your talking points is how technological systems have really become part of enterprise risk management writ large. And then in addition, business strategy. So I guess maybe to kick it off, what are some of the things that you think security executives and the teams in particular need to do to navigate between this kind of inevitable inseparation between technology systems, security risk, and business objectives?
Yeah, so there are two immediate thoughts. One is that we really need security teams and security program leads to make sure that they're thinking strategically and not get trapped in the day-to-day shiny object procurement cycles. Really start thinking about the broader risk to the enterprise rather than, again, diving down into a single capability. And part of that is starting, as I see it, with a real full analysis and understanding of what your threat model looks like. We do see a lot of organizations that get wrapped around the axle on ransomware, which is important, and it's also probably the single greatest threat to any organization. But at the same time, there's an increasing number of organizations that kind of fit into an adversary's playbook. And what we're seeing lately is much more aggressive behavior by particularly the Chinese Ministry of State Security and the PLA, as evidenced by the Volt Typhoon and Crimson Typhoon activity that reported earlier this summer out of Microsoft. That shows that they're preparing for conflict. And in doing so, they would try to win the fight before the fight's actually begun. And part of that is going after U.S. critical infrastructure and our ability to support the military as well as just general civil society. So I do think it's critically important that organizations take a step back and say, how would I fit into an adversary's game plan? And what do I need to do to step up from a security perspective? But also, how do I need to work better with government and make sure I understand the threats coming my way? That's great, right? That's exactly where you need to start. How you get that done is actually quite complicated, though. You start with a threat model, you run a gap analysis against your current security program, and then you pull together the roadmap on how you do that. A CISO or a security team lead in their own positions will not be able to get that done in any sort of realistic time frame or practically execute. It really does require high-level executive engagement to ensure that you're pulling together a team that can communicate the risks to the business. And it's going to take a collective approach here. So make sure you're working across industry. ISACs are great tools to make sure that you kind of know what else is happening in the sector across the industry. And then, of course, keep working with government, whether it's CISA or the intelligence community and the FBI or foreign partners that play a similar role.
So switching gears on you here a little bit, but since you left CISA, the agency has been pretty much on the lead or pegged as the U.S. government's efforts to help attract, retain, and bring in additional cybersecurity talent. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, even from your time and what you're seeing now, what are some of the skill sets that the agencies you've worked with need the most when we think about kind of cybersecurity profession? Yeah,
I think one of the real turning points over the last several years, particularly at CISA, is the ability it's not too different from the private sector, right? It's the ability to communicate risk in a way that makes business sense. How do you talk to not just the defenders that understand how to, they know what a YAR rule is. How do you talk to their executives that set their budget, that give them, that have the governance and policy responsibilities? And that's one of the big things that we really tried to emphasize in my time, and I see Jen continuing to do, working at the senior levels to help them understand, hey, the best example that I have here is in 2020, in January 2nd, when the U.S. government took out General Soleimani with the IRGC, we were able to immediately get not just some tactical information out to defenders on here, the common TTPs for Iranian threat actors and their proxies, but also flip it into an executive version that said, here's why this matters to you in the private sector and the things they've done in the past going after banks and other critical infrastructure when they're agitated, how they've hit regionally as well as they've hit. So trying to put into context why events matter to executives, not just at the technical security level, but also at the business risk level. That's the sort of thing, again, we need more people that understand how to communicate in business terms. I also think, the thing that I've been really kind of heartened by is the continued emphasis on building out the CISA field force. Jen Easterly, it was a month or so ago, announced that they're going to be election state coordinators out, and I understand they're in the process of hiring and interviewing for this. I think that's fantastic to have dedicated election support teams out in the regions, as well as the continued cybersecurity advisor, so that you can get that last mile engagement, that last mile tailoring of engagement. Because otherwise, if you're pushing CISA out of DC, it's just not going to land. It's not going to resonate uniformly.
I know one of the things we talk about is this idea that, we in the cybersecurity community have spent so much of our time kind of focused on like finding those unicorns or finding someone who has all that experience and then can all of a sudden communicate it. And it's partly because we focus on the individual and try and hire those superstars right off the gate. But in reality, a lot of times they just don't exist until we grow them. So, should we shift our attention from finding those diamonds in the rough and grow that workforce more than we have necessarily in the past?
Well, I think some of the programs that have been put into place for hiring over the last year, including the cyber talent management system, is going to give a bigger kind of top of the funnel for recruiting to bring in more technical people that don't stick to the traditional GS scale that really is more of an administrative management approach. And you don't really know how within the GS scale how to hire and retain someone that may have been, hacking boxes since they were 10, 11, 12, and now they just finished either a 2-year school or maybe didn't even go to college. And it really does prioritize in the GS scale, 4-year degrees. And that may not always be relevant. And so CTMS should give an advantage. But, there are still challenges in hiring the government. It takes too long. It's far too bureaucratic. You have security clearance challenges at times as well. So, we need to continue looking to make sure that we're not overclassifying and overspeccing positions. And in my role at the Aspen Institute in the cyber working group there, we have done some work on hiring recommendations, including the making sure you're not overspeccing and things like that.
Yeah. Well, my last question is probably the most important question / statement, which is I have been told that you are known for your socks.
Oh.
And I wanted to, even though I can't see them, I wanted to share with everyone your socks. Oysters. All right. Just in time for fall. So.
Yes. No, I kind of got away from socks for a little bit, and then it mainly just would not wear them during the summer in particular.
Right.
So, but
we're just coming back into it. So.
Yeah, right. There we go.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time with us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks. Have a great day.
That's Chris Krebs speaking with my N2K colleague, Simone Petrella. Meet Mimecast. They're in the business of taking companies at risk of cyber attack and putting them at ease. Picture this. It's Monday morning. You're cruising through hundreds of unread emails. Your impulse to promptly click, download, or respond could be a prompt to launch a cyber attack. An email address is a direct digital path to the mind, the machine, and the data of every person in your organization. It needs better security. I know what you're thinking. I'm all set. I have Microsoft 365 protection, Dave. It might not be enough. That's where Mimecast comes in. They've developed a system that fortifies your email security and reduces costs, risks, and complexities, enabling you and your business to work protected. So before you click your next email, visit mimecast.com to start your free 30-day trial. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. Your feedback helps us ensure we're delivering the information and insights that help keep you a step ahead in the rapidly changing world of cybersecurity. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like the CyberWire are part of the daily intelligence routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, as well as the critical security teams supporting the Fortune 500 and many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by our editorial staff. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, session hijacking, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, session cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific exposed data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation that fits seamlessly into existing incident response frameworks. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. One final note, if you missed our recent panel discussion with my friends at Unit 42 by Palo Alto Networks and Dragos on securing industrial infrastructure, you can catch the conversation on demand by visiting thecyberwire.com/Dragos.